And welcome. This year we've seen some horrific road crashes brought into our homes and lives via news feeds, and we often forget what a privilege it is to be able to drive and the responsibility that comes with it. But how does this affect the first responders to the crashes or those whose job it is to take care of the heartbreaking tragedies? Our guests in this episode are Senior Sergeant Sue O'Connor from the Road Safety Section and Inspector Damien Eichner from the Traffic Service Branch. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Is this as scary as it is when you have to go and tell somebody what's happened to their loved ones on the road?
It is scary, but unfortunately the delivery of messages to families and loved ones that have had someone involved in a road crash where there's been a life lost or a serious injury occur is particularly difficult for our people. And the trauma can extend to the emergency services workers, not only police, but to SA ambulance and fire officers that
because they really see it in the flesh, so to speak.
So they aren't allowed any filter. So they see it for the raw details that are presented to them, and then have to turn around and be compassionate and controlled in their own emotional stability to be able to talk to the family.
Right. Well, let's talk about the both of you to start with. Why did you become a police officer, Sue?
Oh, it was a long time ago now. Guess I just always had that passion to be involved with the community and help. Probably the main reason I joined at a very young age of 18, so it seems like a lifetime ago now.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, we'll take that, yeah.
Was it a calling, though, that came through education? Did you see something that made you think, that's the career for me?
I didn't really have any involvement with police growing up. I had no relatives that were police officers.
You weren't in trouble with the law?
No, not in trouble at all. My parents, I think, were quite shocked when it was something that I decided, but I did decide from a very young age it was what I wanted to do. So as soon as I was able to, it's what I endeavoured to do and took the steps to make sure that happened.
Because everything that we do in life usually is stimulated by something. What about you?
I had a alternate entry into the police, so where I entered into the police as an apprentice motor mechanic.
Right.
At the sweet young age of 16 years old, and finished my apprenticeship when we had our own workshops. And then due to civilianisation, I was availed the opportunity to continue a police career into a normal vein of policing. And the reasons why I did that was having seen the policing community, the way we operate and the reasons why we function as an organisation were really clear at that time, and almost a sense of adventure and a sense of reward in being able to help the community and assist in other people's personal emergencies, and give you almost a sense of achievement in being able to manage something for somebody else and helping them get through it.
Do you think that, we were just saying before, when I was a kid, we were more or less taught, if you're in trouble anywhere, to find a policeman. But of course there are a lot more people, particularly in the city, on the beat. But most kids these days have got a mobile phone anyway. So if they were desperate, it's not that hard to solve the problem. Do we have enough education towards the police, do you think, like in schools and just general community activities to respect the police?
So the police are continually trying to break those barriers down. So the adage that the parents saying to the children that if you're naughty, the policeman's going to come and lock you up, is particularly difficult for us to get around.
Exactly.
And it takes a lot of undoing to regain the trust and confidence that the police are there to help, and we are there for the right reasons. And sometimes we're seen as the bad guys if we're involved in a apprehension of a person that's committed a crime, or even as simple as a traffic stop on the side of the road.
Do you think the problem is, though, we forget as a society we all share the place we live, the road we drive on, the street we walk on, and if we're not doing the right thing by sharing that in the right way, clearly somebody needs to intercede.
Absolutely. So it's about fairness and respect for everybody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately...
And really that's what you're policing when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about the road carnage, because it's been a particularly bad year this year, and it must be very difficult for all of the first responders as to what they have to do, but particularly for police, because they're the ones usually having to tell the nearest and dearest.
Yeah, we've had a horrendous start to 2023. Unfortunately, we had the worst start to the year that we've seen in the last 10 years, and we've worked very hard with policing strategy to try and reduce that impact. Thankfully, so far in the recent months, we have achieved a slowdown of the situation that we were seeing earlier in the year, but that doesn't take away the fact that we are continually trying to ensure people are doing the right thing out on the road, because our people that go to these collisions and crashes that occur throughout the state creates trauma for us, it creates trauma for their family, it creates trauma for the loved ones,
everyone,
and the community in general.
Yep.
And as a rolling effect, if we look at it from a different angle, the care for people that don't lose their life in a collision and are seriously injured is ongoing for a considerable amount of time, and the impacts to the emergency support people that work with them from that point forward is equally as damaging.
It's really forever, because you never,
Yep.
how can you ever get that out of your head? I mean, my dad taught me to drive a car, because back in those days that could happen. One of the things he taught me was always to be very aware of other road users. But we seem to have a lot of people who are angry with every other road user, or we're in such a hurry we have to run that red light, or we have to swerve around a vehicle, or whatever. Is it in the education initially when people get their licence, do you think, that there needs to be more push as to the fairness of using the same facility, being a road?
Well, I guess there's been a change recently in relation to learner drivers and through the licensing scheme and how they get their licence. What we find is a lot of parents take on that responsibility of teaching their child how to drive, and most of those people haven't sat
for a driver's licence.
since they were
for a
16
long
themselves.
time. Yes.
So there's been legislative changes. Mobile phones certainly weren't around when I was learning how to drive. I've only recently, with both of my children, put them through their paces, and there was lots of discussion around who was right and who was wrong from that. So I guess...
you were right, no doubt.
Well, one would hope so. One would really hope so. So I guess from a parenting perspective, when you are embarking on that journey with your child, it's on you to sit down and refresh what you know about the road rules and what's changed, and that can all be done through My Licence, and there's little quizzes you can take and do with them. But it's on you to learn how to teach your child how to drive properly, correctly, and I guess with the manners that everyone requires.
Manners, that's a good word to
Yes,
use.
it
I
is.
like that.
Yes, well, I think we have been known to be in this state a little bit aggressive in our driving.
It's not giving way fairly,
Yeah.
letting people into a traffic lane. But mind you, when I learnt to drive, it was a long time ago, and we had none of that sort of build-up of traffic on the road. It was a completely different time. So in many ways, I learnt as time went on, and I'm sure if I did a driving test, I would be making mistakes. Is there a need? Do you think there's a need to put, as we get older, is there a need to put people through like a 10-year driving test, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 sort of thing? I'm asking you questions that are probably not in your field, but they're things that we all need to consider.
So there is consideration around licensing schemes across the board for all ages. So as Sue's mentioned, the MyEls system that's recently come in for learner drivers. We're currently working through an ultra high powered vehicle licensing scheme.
Right.
We have, through Sue's section, a review of elderly drivers that are involved in collisions.
So at what age does that start for elderly drivers?
Well, we have, we like to say we have lifelong road safety education from preschool through to older road users. So we've got a session designed for everyone in between those age groups. So at different points you can touch in with us and be involved in a road safety session.
And so is this, you can instigate this yourself,
Yeah.
or does this need to be instigated through a doctor,
No,
may occur when you're older?
No, so sitting in a road safety session, any community group, any school, any organisation can have us in. So we do a lot of work obviously with the schools, the young kids starting off at the Road Safety Centre and learning how to cross the road safely and ride a bike safely.
Right.
Then goes on to, primary school, secondary schools where they start getting into vehicles and we're teaching them about being responsible passengers, getting out of the car when people aren't making smart choices and then becoming the driver of that car and then making choices to keep everyone else safe that they're travelling with.
I always say to kids, are you learning to drive when they're 8, 9, 10? And they look at me like, what?
Yeah.
Parents do the same.
Yeah.
My argument is if you don't know the roads that you're going on, how will you find your way home when you can drive a car? So pay attention right from the beginning. Is that, again, this is a bit of a sweeping statement, is paying attention the cause of most road crashes? Do you think?
So distraction is a key contributor to the crashes that we're seeing on our roads. So we look at what we refer to as the fatal five, and distraction is one of those key points, along with dangerous road use, along with driving with drug and alcohol in your system,
yes.
and obviously speeding. So speeding is represented in most crashes, and distraction is identified on most occasions.
And that would no doubt be on most occasions with a mobile phone in your hand. But speaking of a mobile phone, just take a break for a tick and we'll be back in a moment with these two fabulous people from our police force. Welcome back. We're talking with Sue O'Connor and Damien Eichner, who are both from the South Australian Police Force, or SAPOL. You've got these new incentives happening, which we really would like to know about.
Yeah, so probably our first one is SAPOL for the first time have engaged a road safety ambassador. So for us, it's Holly Scott. And Holly was involved in a serious crash in 2017 that happened in the Adelaide Hills, a crash that she should have lost her life in. And it's a miracle that she actually survived. The crash has left Holly with a traumatic brain injury and other injuries. She pretty much broke every bone in her body, has spent a lot of time in Hampstead learning how to walk, talk, training her brain to redo the things that she used to take. She was only 22 when the crash happened. So for her, peak of her life, just had a new job, just got a new boyfriend, was out every weekend, and then suddenly everything for her changed. So we have spent a fair bit of time working with Holly, and she now presents in our secondary sessions that we present to students. But her and her dad also come in and we talk to learner drivers and their parents about getting a licence for the first time and what the parents need to do to keep their kids safe and what the young people need to do to stay safe on the roads.
So this is when both the child or the young person and the parent can do a test separately, but at the same time.
Yeah, so
isn't that a brilliant idea?
We put the parents through a little bit of a refresher, and it's interesting some of the answers that we do get. But it's great that they're invested and they're trying to have their kids get the right information.
Well, you want to keep your kids.
Correct.
Yes. I love doing those tests in the RA booklet or online that come out, because sometimes you think, now what would I do in that situation? So it's great to have that sort of re-stimulation of thought. Yeah.
So it's good for the young people to see Holly. Her crash was a serious crash. So she resonates with them because she's young. She Snapchatted her recovery. So everything she has done since then has been in a forum that they understand and they communicate on. So it's a great way for them to get the message.
Well, everything is so easy now, and you were talking about the podcasts as well. The fact that a podcast exists as well, which is now sort of the flavour of the month.
Yeah, so we've made 3 road safety podcasts, and 2 weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, I went to Canberra to win to pick up an award that we were awarded for a National Road Safety Award.
Fantastic.
For an innovative initiative in that space. So we've been really lucky that we have families that are willing to share their stories, and for them, that's reliving the death of a loved one. So we've had 3 people that...
How else can you remember them, really?
I mean, it's a nice way for them to get their story out, but again, they're sharing that story and a tragic time. We have police officers that feature on it. We have other emergency services that speak, witnesses. So as Damien said earlier, the ripple effect of the trauma that one accident crash causes.
You can't even imagine what that's going to be like unless it happens to you.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. So what's happening? So I'm driving in a country road. I'm not familiar with the road. The road could be breaking away slightly at the side, or there could be potholes or something, and I lose control of the car. it's not really my fault, but maybe it is because I've been just driving too fast on a road that's not appropriate. What mechanism is in place if these things occur? For example, I see a pothole in the road that I can see is really dangerous. Is there something in place that maybe I could report that, or somebody is checking on the roads constantly?
So the roads are managed by one of two places, being Department of Infrastructure and Transport will do the major roads, so the big highways and so forth like that. So if a defect is identified on the road, or a pothole, or something that's occurred out there, they would be the organisation to report that to.
And is it worth doing that?
Absolutely. So they have online reporting systems. So and in line with the council-owned roads for more local back roads, they quite often, most of the councils now have got an app that you can report your pothole or report a road condition. And because they can't be everywhere all the time assessing the roads. So they need the public support to be able to identify the problems so they can fix them for everyone else.
That's where I was going. It's great to be able to use the road, but everybody needs to support each other, as we said at the beginning. And this is just an easy example to do that. But there does seem to be a disproportionate number of people in crashes on country roads than there are in the city. Perhaps we're more aware of speed limits in the city. Is that the reason, or?
There's a slower speed in the city, but we talk about the country's misrepresentation in lives lost, where we've seen over the last 5 years that the country areas will be at 70% of our lives lost, and they will hold that every year. The reasons that we see that is the speeds are higher, there's less traffic around, so your attention and your concentration reduces because there's no one else to watch. In the city, we've got the advantage that cars are constantly moving around us, and it stimulates your mind to keep focus on what's around you. What we are seeing, however, is in the metropolitan areas, we're getting significantly more serious injury collisions. So people that are suffering a high level of injury and require ongoing support for an extended period of time.
Right, and why is that?
Because of the nature of the collisions being more intersections, so you've got more side impacts into vehicles.
Right. Oh, yes. So it's banging. Yes.
So the angles, because the people are all coming in from all angles, so the angle of the collision that the vehicle's being hit at is different.
I've got a smart car. I don't want anybody to come near me at all. Thanks very much. Not a lot of protection either way.
No, you don't in a smart car.
So I'm very conscious of that.
Particularly careful.
So I'm very, very careful and try and keep, as my dad always said, keep one eye on the road, one eye on the rear vision mirror, one eye on the side vision mirror, and just make sure that nobody's close to you.
Absolutely. So the situational awareness, particularly, I mean, for all age drivers, the situational awareness is absolutely paramount. You must know what your environment's doing around you.
Yes.
And in the country, sometimes people forget that their speed is a contributing factor to their environment.
The mobile phone obviously is one of the biggest problems of all, and we don't really need to overstress that because I think we all get it, but we're all so prone to have to answer that call, look at that text message and see what the phone is doing. And we forget how important our life is, that whatever is on that phone is not as important as what we're seeing in front of us.
Yeah, and that's how the generation is brought up at the moment. It's that ready for information. And when we're talking about distraction on the roads, we're not actually just talking about mobile phones. So we have people that read books on the way to work, or have a newspaper on their steering wheel, or are putting on their makeup,
or eating
have
their
a dog
breakfast
on their front lap. Correct. So there's a whole heap of things that distraction falls under. Everyone immediately goes to a mobile phone, but there are plenty of other things that happen in the car that can also be distracting. It can just be the kids in the back seat fighting.
All right, so there's going to be a message at the end of this, which is just to be a lot more aware, but we'll be back in a minute just to talk a little bit more about this before we say goodbye. Our guests, Cecile O'Connor from the Road Safety Section and Inspector Damien Eichner from Traffic Services Branch from, say, South Australian Police. What's the last bit? Oh,
South Australian Police.
Poll, of course. We're just wrapping up. We're just talking in the break. Just say what you're going to say. There's no question I can ask you that makes sense.
So we're talking about, we finished off the last section with some distraction of driving.
Yeah.
And Sue articulated some of the things that are not mobile phones that can distract you.
Because I would have thought that would have been the main distraction, but clearly it's not.
So distraction can mean a lot of things. It can be that you've had a dispute at home before you've driven your car, so your mind's not on your driving. It could be that you're going for a job interview. It could be that someone you knew has been involved in a road crash. So
just your mind is not on the job.
So your mind is absent, and your decisions are poor at that point in time. So whilst distraction is a key component of what we're working towards, making the road safer, we've got other areas like dangerous road users. We continually have to work, implement strategies to try and reduce the dangerous road use. That can range from anything from hoon driving, with people doing extended burnouts on the road, as we saw in Eichner Street recently, to it
Why?
can be...
You've got to ask yourself why, really.
There's far too much money to pay for tyres. But that can be as simple as not giving way at a giveaway sign.
Yep.
So the consequences of a
Why wouldn't you?
simple decision like that
Makes no sense.
can be catastrophic.
Is it really that we don't really value our lives as much as we should because everything in our society now is so easy?
I think people honestly believe it will not happen to them.
Yep.
So it's not their problem because it won't happen to me.
Yep.
Unfortunately, as we've attested to with Holly's presentation that she described, she was a young, vibrant, attractive girl, and in an instant her life changed. And
Absolutely, yeah.
Her presentation is very emotively driven, and it tells a real, true, honest, bare
someone who's
impact.
lived the experience.
Yeah,
Yep.
still
Absolutely.
living the impact.
Yeah. And when you say that, when you see felt the impact, it's not just the impact after the event, it's actually the impact at the time. It must hurt a lot.
Yeah,
and none of us
absolutely.
want to put ourselves through that. So we've all got to ask ourselves, why would we break the rules of the road and endanger our lives? Just why would we?
It makes no sense, and to be honest, that speeding 5-10 k's over doesn't really get you to your destination any quicker. So you're risking your life and other people's. And again, we've talked about being a victim of road trauma. Imagine being the person that killed somebody. So one of the podcasts we work with a
Absolutely.
young person who killed his best mate. So to hear him talk about being mentally in his jail, which is where he is, and he'll be there forever.
Ruin your life forever.
Correct.
Thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us. It's been great. It's been great in the past to have some officers of our police force to come and talk about all sorts of things, because often we look at the police to help us, but we don't always look at the police perhaps in the, we're afraid. When we see a police officer, we think, I've done something wrong. So it makes you actually think, did I do something wrong to have those thoughts? What's the future for you guys, do you think? There's a question.
There is a question. To have zero...
For example, who's coming up with the ideas of things like the podcasts, the people to talk with? Is more happening in your area with that?
Yeah.
And in your area, what's happening with trying to get people to focus more on what they're doing?
So my area is a team of very dedicated police officers who spend their day trying to think of the next thing that we can do to make an impact. So the things like the podcasts and Holly's involvement and
being
the
on a
programs,
show like this?
being on shows like this, and the programs that we run on a daily basis across the entire state are things that my team and I come up with and we put forward as suggestions, and a lot of the time we get to do those things. So we really hope that the things we do make a difference.
Brilliant.
And we obviously the enforcement arm of what the police undertake to try and reduce the impacts of road collisions will be ongoing. We make no secret of that.
They need to be.
That
For the
must
good
be
of us
ongoing.
all.
We are also implementing a process of education through community engagement sessions that we're running, in particularly in country areas. We will meet up with the community and try and get them to articulate where they think the concerns are, what they think the problems are, and it enables us to have an open discussion with them about what their perception of things are, and is that where we see it as well?
Right.
Or it might actually identify to us that there's an infrastructure problem, so we can work with the councils. And
Absolutely.
Department
Actually, all of those
Infrastructure
things have been a bit eye-opening to me too. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this episode of Our Time. Till next time, keep yourself nice till then. Bye.